Hey, howdy, guys. I'm recording this while the first bit of snow falls here in Brooklyn, New York. And we're tiptoeing up to a holiday season where, depending on where you're listening to this, I suppose there's somebody out there that things probably feel some kind of new normal. But there's also a pretty good chance that hearing this, you're heading into what could be a challenging winter, maybe a disappointing holiday season. I know I've had a few disappointments to my holiday season already and a few more on the horizon. And so I wanted to record this episode on something called regoaling. It's a technique that is based on practice and research that comes out of Philadelphia Children's Hospital and its work with the parents of terminally ill children. And I honestly don't think that I can imagine something more devastating than learning that the child that you have nurtured isn't going to make it. Um, I've had two very early miscarriages, and I'm a person who gets really optimistic about just about anything. I could get excited about, I don't know, going to the grocery store. So you can imagine, as that kind of excited creative optimist, that even when it was just a few weeks, my own sense of disappointment and loss, I cannot wrap my head around the idea of what it must feel like in that moment. So the technique of regoaling was developed by the practitioners and the advisors to the parents of children who they now know are not going to make it, which is a pretty rough pill to swallow. But I feel pretty strongly that when we look at the most extreme cases of life is where we can learn some of the most valuable lessons. And so often we're looking, at least in America, in this country, at the high performers, the people we see as exceptional, the Brendan Bouchards and the Tony Robbins and Tim Ferrisses of the world, or the musicians, the basketball players, the movie stars. But there is a lot to be gained by looking at the extreme ends at the other side of the scale. Who are the people that cope well with loss? And when we look to them, we can learn a lot about our own sense of loss and reshuffling of our lives. And so many of us have been through so many rounds of that this year. And I know a lot of people who feel tired as a consequence. So this episode is about the skills of regoaling, the process. So hopefully that you can use that tool in your own life the next time something comes up that knocks you off of what you thought was your path. So it's 6 steps to let go of what you wanted when it's not going to happen and to help you move into a new set of goals around what can happen. Because that's a really important step. So often we're so focused on the releasing, we forget about the re-engaging. And in the middle of those, in that gap, is languishing, right? What do I do now? So let's talk about what are the steps. There's 6 steps to regoaling that lead us to, well, what are you going to do now? So the first is just own your feelings, whatever they are, whatever has happened that shifted your plan. Just own up to those feelings. And this will require a bit of bravery, a bit of emotional intelligence. What are you feeling? Anger, frustration, guilt, shame. I know so many people who were frustrated at their local lockdowns, frustrated at what was happening in their lives, but they're also mad at themselves for feeling bad because they still had a place to live, they still had a job, they still had enough food. And there's no wrong answer here. You feel your feelings, whatever they are. and allow yourself the space to do that. And that's going to take as long as it takes. But once you've done that, once you've yelled it out or written it out or cried it out or punched it out, hopefully to pillows or pads, the next thing is to accept your reality as completely and honestly and directly as possible. So this might mean for you accepting the outbreak in your area. It could mean accepting the loss of a person, a job, a space, a hope, a belief in someone else. I've had that happen a few times this year. But if you try to force yourself into that before you felt your feelings, it will ultimately be detrimental to you emotionally and socially and cognitively. Because how many times in our lives we try to go, okay, I got this. Just give me the facts. And then you just end up hysterical about it later. It reverts us. So let it land. And then once all the dust has settled, okay, where are the big rocks? What do I need to know? Because you might make some decisions out of feelings that weren't resolved because you weren't ready to accept the reality. And then, and only then, once you know what's real, once you have felt the feelings, open yourself up to releasing your old goals. Let them go. Well, my preferred way of doing this is to write them down in the form of almost like a thank you letter, like a goodbye and thank you letter, and burn them. Because then I feel like they've truly been released from my life. That was what I used when my marriage ended. It's how I handled the releasing of my old self. I used to be Darlene McCullough. And I wrote a release letter to that persona, to that person, and the things that she wanted and the things that she thought her life was going to be. And then I let it burn. And you're going to have your own techniques, your own ideas of how to release those things, but letting go of what you thought your future was going to be. So release those old habits, those old, goals. And then in that space, you can assess what's important. And this year, to me, this is the great opportunity of 2020, is the smack on the forehead, the gut check to what's actually important to all of us now going forward. What matters? Who actually matters to you? And when you anchor to what's important to you, what do you value? Who do you care about? Is it your faith, your education, your future, your family, your business, your community, and the businesses within your community? Is it contribution? Is it a charity? Whatever the answer is, when you can dig down into the bedrock of what actually mattered and you've let go of what happened before, that's what allows you to know what to do next. And this is the great question that comes out of this process of regoaling, the question that they ask those parents with their terminally ill child, that they can no longer say to you, hope that that person gets to go to college or they get married or they have children someday. But what can you hope for now? And hope unlocks the floodgates of connection and future, of possibility. And yes, it's within the framework of the reality that you're in now, because the rules are different. But hope, what can you hope for now? Frees up the space to create the new reality. And then you set new goals and new priorities to move forward from. So those 6 steps: own your feelings, really feel them, let them land. Number 2, accept your new reality and where you are in this new space as openly and honestly and realistically as you can, to release the old goals when it's time, to identify what's important to you, what really matters. And then from those values, from what's important, to look to what you can hope for now and then set new priorities or new goals going forward. And I hope whatever you end up doing through the rest of this year, that you're able to anchor it in the bedrock of what you value and what's most important to you, no matter who you spend the time with or how you spend it, that you feel valued and that you are contributing in some way into the lives of those you love, and that the institutions, the causes that are important to you and your values. Whatever holidays you celebrate, I hope that they fulfill your need for connection, for spiritual practice, and that they fill you up to sustain us through, geez, whatever comes next. Alien invasion at this point. um, any questions, please feel free to reach out. Instagram, I'm at darlene.coach. My email is darlene@darlene.coach, or you can find me on Facebook. Thanks, guys. Let's leave it there.